I've waited all day for you, with my eyes closed, or my face in my hands, and let the sun come across the blue tile in a lilting square from the eastern window. The water in the face bowl began to shine. I am a fool, conjuring your touch. I caught myself laughing and even smiling out loud. I bathed today and felt like silk, in transit against silk, and sitting in the warm water in an odd moment. It was like being inside you. I mean, the easy push and pull of the lazy day was like being beautifully sleepy and happy, like being inside you. It's like yawning and stretching, being so electric and long in that clean moment, authenticated by the lack of urgency and unlocking in slow fire that clouds and music soften the room. Or having been kissed 1,000 beautiful times and released, called back and kissed again at every single measure of tongue. Or walking the crowded city quite wonderfully alone, singing, still wearing your shadows, the right dark between your breasts. Like breathing your breath and measuring the expanded self, or asking for more inside your mouth. Like turning city Cadillacs in vent where evening changes the highlights in your hair to gold fleck cinnamon. Like touching your tongue, telling secrets in braille and being inside you. I mean, like crescendoing your hips beneath me, or pirouetting downtown lampposts where your breasts float and your smile is a flash of sunlight on water. Like laughing between our late night promises, being in intimate orbit, knitting the covers between our legs and feet, changing skin and gender, and being so wonderful and so deep inside you. Tonight, under the stars, on beautiful hillsides in the lonely rush of early autumn, I am remembering you. Tonight, in the moonlit forest of my desire, in the cool of my forever lonesome memory, where years have laid miles and miles of forgotten roads, in the vast and untilled country between us, I am remembering you. Sometimes when night falls, and the city lights itself in sections like a lazy carnival, and I watch with the same eyes that gathered in every move you made, every smile after making love. And sometimes, as the night sky stretched its blue-black veils above us and leaked darkness into our little place, when the furniture became great shapes and our perfectly formed youth hovered, suspended in velvet anticipation, there in the twilight, you would be warm against me, and your nakedness, the most beautiful thing in the fading world. Oh, if I were to live again and meet you one day in the school hall, if I were capable of such rare magic in the presence of unabated freedom, if I were to touch you again for the first time in the coming dark, it would be to thrill my soul with endless early autumns. It would be to love in apartments in cities where on weekends where hunger didn't exist. And if you loved me in return like you used to, and kissed me like the earth would end, and made love among the blue covers as the rainy harbor lay still and attentive, listening to the distant sounds of the electronic universe, sadly, there will be moments lost, like laughter into the October air. And of course there would be pleasure run through, like beautiful towns left unexplored. And yes, there would be sleep after joy, when we were careless and forgot, and the exquisite drunken warm heaviness lulled us away from love. But October, preparing its leaves to fall, when the world returns to its marching business among the traffic and harbors, once again industrial and ominously lit, will be ours, even if all else fails and we never touch again. I take the moon-curved scars of our parting. I take the moon in miracled madness. I take the harbors we left unloved, and the candlelit sadness, and the kisses, each one wrapped in your beautiful smile. I take the rainy midnight earth and slick avenues where mile after mile invited us to walk and know one another well. I take the smell of you on my covers when yet another year pushes its girth between you and I. I take what I have and painfully accept what I don't and move on. Our elderly mothers come back through the large tan doors into the waiting room full of young mothers who are frantic and green and with child, erotic and with child again. And mama comes among them, searching the people for us, finds us in a quiet corner away from the kids, thumbing the gardening magazines, and we in turn watch her eyes before she conjures her strong smile. Watching for the diagnosis, it's always in her eyes. The frank news before her posture returns, and she feigns not needing her cane. Educator, pastor, community mother smiles for everyone, but a glance at you from darkness. She is witnessing her own destruction, and you are in orbit around her, interpreting silences. This year was short ether. Cardiology clinics and the immeasurable weights of the specialists waiting in the business square atrium among the roses, watching birds and counting stars. I have spent whole days hungry and sterile, stainless among the magazines, and slept and awoke and waited until she came and said, let's go, usually to the pharmacy, then to eat. I was her best friend and sometimes did not want to be. I was her son and needed her in that way. But when there was no one else to tell about the hysterectomy to remove the dark thing showing on the x-ray, she asked my opinion. I simply wanted her to lie and told her I'd be there. After a season of hospital halls and nurses clicking and scuffling by, transfusions in the lilac quiet, she stopped going to her appointments, stopped driving. We missed the scheduled blood work and the breathing treatments. Each week was some private suffering, but no more doctors. She was in her nightgown for 4 days. She couldn't sleep laying down. Hadn't been to church in 2 months. When she was up to it, I'd take her to the store. She'd sit in the car and watch the people. I'd take the long way home, past the new houses and her old school, open the windows to hear the children playing. When she was barely verbal, I'd sing with her, say funny things, and rub her back, talk about Africa and Alabama, and how we'd go and go when she got better, oh, the things we were going to eat, and the places, the poems we would collaborate on. It was the pan of windless summer, and very hot. The crops were full of white light, and the dust was furious at the roadside. The air conditioner burned out, gave into the temper of the season. I kept trays of ice and would wrap them in a towel, lay the towel on her. We suggested she go to my sister's to keep cool. She refused, and the heat settled in around the house like a belligerent stranger. After 2 days of much wrangling over the warranty of the air conditioner, they fixed it. She asked me to fill her belly. It was hard and dark like volcanic glass. Her furosemide wasn't working, wasn't cutting her water. Her asthma began to betray her. Everything kept her panting and came with so much effort, all that sky and no breath. She wanted to tell me who she paid the mortgage to show me the papers, but she started to cough and needed her inhaler. I rubbed her back until she called. The morning was still and bright. I didn't hear her up and around, so I let her sleep, went out into the yard, into my car. After about 30 minutes, I eventually came to her bedroom door. At the edge of her door, I watched her shoulder. I noticed her feet were dark. I watched her shoulder further. it never moved. I watched longer and longer, it never moved. My mother would have loved Obama. The idea of him from apartheid in the South, where black men stood at the cusp of living, confounded by the lack of choices, from terror in Alabama to infinite history. She would have driven her silver Cadillac to church and testified to the greatness of God and the mysteries therein. Oh, they would have Holy Ghost danced and shouted and claimed him. Oh, they would have preached and been thrust back to youth. She would have eaten from the New Hope, the sermon of it, and been sticky with the sweetness. I hope she knows, and I hope she is all right, and knows that I am moving toward being all right, and that we continue on with dignity in the limited knowledge of being here in this life, and have adjusted to the loss of our flesh, now that we are without compass or honing point in the widest, emptiest country in the world. For joy. I marginal, I omitted, I incongruent, and all center square. Joy. Those people who bark at you, who make guttural noises and imitate your heaviness, who find their hipness standing square on yours, don't know that your mother may wish you were different, and that when you come home on Christmas break, she takes exception to your short hair and your dark skin, never asks if you have romance, never the pretty conversations of how to who knows in a suitor's ear, just the oblivion of your sexless body, the large flat nothingness of you. And your father explains to company during his genteel moments when he conjures his big words that you are ugly but sweet, calls you from the den to say hello, invites the guest to touch the ugliness, and your mother challenges you for wearing red, and that maybe you hanging your head is 400 years old. Why should you show your eyes? Who would respond to the longing or catch the first flash of winter in your silent tear? They will not know that your mother was made at the expense of the fair-skinned world and beaten away from her beauty. And they said, mutilate yourself to be pretty, and she did. And they said, corrupt your children to be pretty, and she did. And when she saw herself eligible to be American woman, you arrived in her life like a curse growing ever blacker at her tip.